Welcome, 8th graders, to our lesson on breaking down the carbs, that is, carbohydrates. We're first going to start with a review of the gizmo you worked on earlier this week. During this gizmo, you had to look at different food samples and you were testing for carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And you used those tests to help you decide what the food sample might be. So, for example, sample E, we had to decide if it was steak, bread, or butter. Looking at the test results, we see that sample E tested positive for protein and positive for fats. So the best answer is steak because both protein and fat were present. All right, let's look at sample I. Sample I tested positive for carbohydrates, but as I move down and I look at the other test, there was no starches present for sample I. And since there were no starches present, it wouldn't make any sense to choose pasta. However, there were sugars present. And since sugars are a type of carbohydrate, sugar was the best answer for sample I. And how about sample M? Sample M, if I'm given the choices of chicken, rice, mango, or butter, I can see that sample M tested positive for carbohydrates, did not test positive for sugars, but did test positive for starch. So I'm looking for a starchy carbohydrate. From these four choices, rice is our best choice because rice is a starchy carbohydrate, and we know those taste bland, and rice tastes bland. If you need further assistance or help related to this gizmo, make sure you touch base with your teacher or touch base with a student who can be helpful to you. Now, let's take a look more carefully at the breaking down of carbohydrate molecules. We'll start first with a carbohydrate made of two subunits. We know that this is lactose. And if lactose reacts with a molecule of water, well, it will produce two carbohydrate subunits known as glucose. So to repeat that, lactose will chemically react with water to produce glucose. Let's take a closer look at that breakdown. We know when there's a chemical reaction, atoms of the reactants will rearrange to form our products. And that's exactly what's happening here. If we take a closer look at this breakdown, the molecules, the atoms that make up this molecule of water will divide. Some of the atoms will join this subunit, and the other atom will join this subunit. Chemical reactions produce new products. Specifically in this example, it produced the glucose. Now, you've heard of glucose before. Glucose definitely produces energy in our body's cells, and we will talk more about that in the next slide or two. But let's look at some more carbohydrate molecules first. Starches are carbohydrate molecules with many, many subunits. If we have complex molecules like this, these complex molecules need to react with many molecules of water. When many molecules of water react with starches that are made of many subunits of carbohydrates, these chemical reactions will produce glucose, many carbohydrate subunits of glucose. So, where does this breakdown begin? Remember, the breakdown begins in our digestive system. Our digestive system breaks down food physically and chemically. We want to focus more on the chemical part of digestion, especially during 8th grade. So, what is the purpose of chemical digestion? Well, Food molecules that are made of many, many subunits need to be broken down into usable subunits, subunits of food that can be diffused into our body's cells. We can't just eat a hamburger or a peanut butter and jelly or a plate of spaghetti and have energy miraculously form. Instead, that food needs to be broken down into usable subunits that will diffuse into our body cells. And those subunits, those small food molecules, will have chemical reactions inside of our cells to produce energy. So, what happens if organisms cannot break down food molecules? Well, if an organism cannot break down food molecules, that organism cannot produce energy. You might be thinking, do plants and animals both break down food molecules? Well, absolutely. Plants are living, animals are living. Their processes of breaking down food might be different, but both of these living organisms need to break down food for energy. Now it's time to review what we know. Make sure you're looking at the fill in the blank part of your guided notes so that you can take notes as we go. Feel free to pause this video at any time while you are taking your fill in the blank notes. Okay, first point. If you consume large food molecules, these complex molecules must first be broken down before they can provide the body with energy. Next bullet point. A breakdown is a chemical reaction in which water combines with a large food molecule to break it into subunits. Starch and water will break down into glucose molecules, for example. We also know that food subunits can provide the body with energy. Again, pause the video if you need to while you are filling in your notes. Last bullet point. The purpose of digestion is to make food molecules smaller so they can diffuse into the cells where they undergo reactions with oxygen to provide the body with energy. Pause this video if you need to while you finish writing your notes. It's time to add the scientific principle. Scientific principle number 4. Large food molecules are broken down through a chemical reaction. Do you feel that you can explain how large food molecules, such as carbohydrates, are broken down into subunits through a chemical reaction? If so, great job today. If you're still having trouble understanding how carbohydrate molecules are broken down into smaller subunits, please rewatch this video and review your notes. Great job paying attention today.